In this installment of our Faxination 2016 video education series, we're going to take a look at the post-install procedures that are common to every Faxination deployment. At this point in our video series, we have a baseline installation of the software, and we've demonstrated that we can send an outbound fax via Exchange and receive a notification about the success or failure of the fax transmission. We still need to configure our document conversion preferences for outbound file attachments. We need to set the international prefix and configure outbound telephony dialing rules using number substitution. We need to configure our local fax device to pass inbound telephony routing digits. We also need to associate those inbound routing digits with Faxination destinations or user entities. And finally, configure the options and permissions for our end users. As you can see, we're back on our Faxination server again. And the first thing we want to look at is under Faxination server. We've stopped all of our services because we're going to make some changes that require the services to be stopped and restarted before the changes will take effect. The first thing we're going to look at is the logging ID. This is really only useful when you have a load balanced environment with multiple kernels. The logging ID is part of the log by default, and this number should represent the node number of the load balanced installation. And that's for troubleshooting purposes. If you find that some messages are failing or not configured correctly in some way, you can look in the log and determine which kernel processed that particular message. It defaults to 0. It really serves no purpose in a single server environment such as this. But if you have multiple kernels, it's best to assign unique logging IDs for each of those kernels. The important thing we want to look at here is under phone number format, the international prefix. The default is 00. This is going to be unique for the country where Faxination is installed. We're using the United States as an example, so in our case it's 011. And the purpose of this is that when a number is received by Faxination as an outgoing fax number, if it includes the plus symbol, this is the string of digits that will be used to replace the plus symbol to get an international connection. So in the US, if the number begins with the plus symbol, we're telling Faxination you need to dial 011 to establish an international connection. Other than that, we want to look at the backup files option. This depends on your company and your own policies. I'm going to save a copy of all incoming and outgoing messages for 90 days and store them in PDF format. So we'll apply that and OK. So now we go to our services, and I'm going to start all of the services except for the Faxination fax over IP device. All right, that's all of our services running. We have a trace running on the Faxination server service, the kernel. And now we are going to send an outbound message to a number with that plus symbol in it. And this is how that plus symbol usually shows up in an outbound fax. If you're going to send to an Outlook contact to their business fax address, Microsoft always enforces the use of the plus symbol at the beginning of the number. So in this case, it's going to a US number, +1 678 942 5223, and in this format you could dial this number from any place on Earth because the plus means dial your international prefix. The 1 is for the United States, and then the next 3 digits are for the area code in the United States. So that's the international dialing format. All right, and we'll send that, and now we'll watch the trace. Okay, you see here, no device supporting message type. That's because the fax over IP connector is not running. What we want to see is the messages received, fax +1 678 942 5223, and then we convert that, replace the plus symbol with the international prefix 011, substituted fax address 0111 678 942 5223 with this string. This is the string that number substitution will receive, but this is not valid for the Atlanta toll-free dialing area. It's too many digits. According to Wikipedia, the Atlanta metropolitan area has the world's largest toll-free calling zone. Within this region, there are 4 area codes: 404, 770, 678, and 470. There's 10-digit dialing, so the area code plus the 7-digit number. If you're dialing within the US but outside of this region, it's 11-digit dialing. And then for international calls, the prefix is 011 plus the country code plus the number. Now, Faxination has to be aware of all of this information to function properly, and this is how we set that up. We're going to set up number substitution. The default credentials for the Faxination management portal are admin and admin. We do recommend you change that in a production environment. And we're going to come down to number substitution. We're dealing with 678 in our business fax contacts, so we'll start with that rule. If the start of the number is 0111 then we need to substitute that string of numbers with 678. Now, the rest of the digits will be carried over. All we're doing is substituting this string of digits for this string of digits. And we click Save. And there's our first number substitution rule. And this rule will correct our business fax contact that we just saw. That will correct that for the local dialing rules in Atlanta. But we need to make some other allowances. If someone dials 1678, then we need to replace those digits with 678. So if they tried to dial it as a long distance number from Atlanta, where the server is located, it's not long distance, it's toll free. So we need to get rid of that 1. So we're replacing 1678 with just 678. And those are the 2 rules that are required for that area code. And through the magic of video, those are our number substitution rules for the Atlanta toll-free dialing area. These will, no matter how you dial the number, either just the long distance format or the international format, we will correct the number to be properly dialed from the Atlanta area. One other thing I'll show you is that this can also be used for blocking certain numbers. So if the number begins with 911, oops, and as most of you know, 911 is the emergency services number in the United States. This is for police and ambulances and fire and so forth. That's never appropriate for a fax transmission. And actually, if you accidentally dial that too many times, you can actually be fined in the United States for just carelessly dialing an emergency services number. So we're going to block 911. Save that. And there you go. Any number, if you try to send a fax to 911, it will be blocked at the server level and won't be transmitted. All right, so that's number substitution. Now we need to configure our fax device to receive inbound routing digits. So under connectivity, we see that our device is this particular service is configured for in and out. CSID is the small text that you see at the top of each page of a fax transmission. So we're going to change our CSID to match our organization, Katoso in this example. Here is inbound, required number of digits. We want 4 routing digits in this example. Verify routing before receipt. We'll actually do an LDAP query and a database query to see if there are any matching users in the environment with those routing digits, and if we determine that it can't be routed, no one's been assigned those digits, we can reject the call. That is disabled by default, but it was requested by someone. We're going to enable the inbound routing code that just basically turns it on. Number of digits used is 4. So these don't have to match. You could receive, for instance, 8 digits and only use the rightmost 4 characters or 4 digits. But in this case, we're expecting 4 from the PBX and we're going to route on 4. If verify routing before accepting is not enabled and that routing code isn't associated with the user, then we can fall back to the service routing ID. And this is an SR code instead of a DIR code. DIR is direct inbound routing. That's the normal way that users are associated with fax numbers. In this case, an SR of 9999 is typically associated with a Faxination administrator. The administrator will receive the fax and they'll look and see who it was meant to go to, and they say, oh, example I give is this is a fax for Craig, and Craig left the company 2 weeks ago. His replacement is Steve, so I need to assign Steve Craig's old fax routing code. So Steve will now receive those faxes. All right, we saw in the previous video, this is the IP address of our PBX, our digital media gateway, or our SIP trunk, basically the fax over IP gateway we're communicating with. We have some advanced settings, just really depending on the environment that you're in. We can't really discuss these. It just depends on the type of PBX that you have, what these requirements would be. All right, so that gives us our inbound routing digits. Now we'll look at the address manager and show how those digits are associated with a user. So here we have database users and we have Active Directory users. This is just named after the primary LDAP resource. So we're going to look in Atlanta and we're going to look at Gary Tom. And under routing, I'm going to give Gary a new route. It's a DIR route of 1234. And we set that. And when those 4 routing digits come in and the fax number ended in 1234, then that we'll know that that fax was intended for Gary. The other things we want to accept, we can have proxy addresses, so different ways that inbound faxes can be mapped to Gary, and different ways that Gary can send outbound and still receive his options and permissions and notifications. Extended data, that's extended properties for Exchange users. Under fax, this is where you can choose what cover sheet to use for this user. You could say no cover, means don't ever give us a cover sheet. We're going to stay with the default CS. The file type that this user wishes to receive, we're going to say PDF. If you have the optical character recognition module licensed and installed, you can use that. We're just going to use PDF. This is the CSID again. If the user has a CSID assigned to them, that CSID will override the CSID on the device. And here is where we assign permissions. User is allowed to send fax messages internationally, override the fax cover sheet, override the CSID. So you could change the CSID on the fly if he's using a Faxination host that allows that. If you're using the Fenestre limits feature, also referred to as traffic, once it's enabled globally, you can set per user limits. So in this case, we'll say Gary is allowed to send 10 messages per day. This can be any configuration you like. So it can be something ridiculous like 1,000 messages per minute. You can assign any kind of arbitrary restriction that you want for this particular user. But again, it has to be enabled globally for all users at some level before per user limits are applied. Same for SMS and same for MMS, separate permissions and limits. I'm going to look at document conversion, which we haven't discussed yet, outbound document conversion. So we're going to open up the Fenestre folder under kernel, and we have some VB scripts down here. All right, specifically select Office conversion, select PDF conversion, and select PostScript conversion. Now, with beginning with Windows Server 2012, you can't run these scripts directly. This is what it looks like. We'll say, okay, we're going to go with Fenestre generic document converter. We click OK, and then we get this error. This error comes because these scripts must be launched with elevated permissions, and there's not really a convenient way to do that in Windows Server 2012. In 2008 and earlier, you could hold down Control or Shift or something and get an option to launch with admin permissions. So what we've got a little pre-launcher, select conversion elevated, and that gives you a list of those 3 other VB scripts, and you just choose which one you want. So we're going to start with the Office converter, and it says for Microsoft Office files, do you want to use the Fenestre generic document converter or Open Office? We're going to use the Fenestre generic document converter, and you see in this case we got a OK. We'll launch conversion elevated again. This time we're going to select the PDF conversion engine. Our options are Adobe Acrobat. Now, if you're going to use Adobe Acrobat, it has to be the full version of Adobe Acrobat. It can't be the free reader version. It has to be the full version. Adobe doesn't allow the free reader version to be controlled by external processes. It doesn't have the hooks that we require to control it. So the full version of Acrobat, Ghost Script, or the Fenestre generic document converter. We prefer Ghost Script and recommend that to our customers in those cases. Ghost Script is already installed on this machine, so we choose that and we get done. And if you are using a host that uses PostScript, and that can be SAP or the Universal Output Connector, the UOC, you'll need to have a PostScript converter in most cases. Could be PCL, but most people use PostScript. So we check the third option, and now it says, for PostScript documents, do you want to use Ghost Script or the Fenestre generic document converter? Again, we prefer to use Ghost Script, and done. So this is just a way of telling Faxination which conversion engines you want to use. And that's it for our post-installation procedures. Faxination 2016 is available now. For more information or to request a free demo, visit us on the web at faxination.com, and keep a lookout here for more updates in this Faxination 2016 video education series. Thanks for watching.